never as many breaks as I wanted. And I think I'm being hard on myself in some regard. So when he said, hey, you should come over, I was like, I love you more than I love business.
Those are things where I'm like, man, dude, I love. Welcome, my friends, to another episode of the Be Somebody podcast. I'm Bobby Macey, your host. And today I have a dear friend of mine. I have been to Mexico twice with this man. We have shared tacos and many other experiences. Jeff Mask.
Thank you. What an intro, man.
Gotta hype it up, you know?
You're amazing. I love you. It's so great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming, Jeff. So you come on the Be Somebody podcast, then at least you have an audience of one that you have won over. For somebody who doesn't know Jeff Mask, how would you describe yourself?
I would describe myself as a very purposeful, very grateful, very excited, and life-loving person.
I would describe you as that way as well. I've had you in mind for years for this. I told you before the show, I'm like, I've had a couple people in mind where it was like, when I launch this, I gotta have them. You're one of them. And part of it is because since the day we met and connected, you have just impressed me in a lot of different ways. And perhaps the biggest of those ways, this is going to sound maybe a little bit cheesy to people, but it's what I would call Christ-like. It's all those things you described. There's gratitude mixed in there. There's love. There's genuine excitement for others. There's building others up. There's, hey, I've experienced my fair share of adversity. And you're not always trying to like I've never seen you turn into the me monster who's like, oh, my life's harder than yours, or it has been, or let me just tell you everything you need to do to get where I'm at type thing. You're the dude, this is how I'm going to say it. You're the dude that has taken the elevator to a certain spot.
I like that.
And you sent it
I'll
back
receive
down.
that. Thank you. But yeah, life is definitely, I have ascended, I have descended, and I have learned, and I do genuinely want to help and serve and lift people. That is, I live to do that. It's great.
I know a little bit about what you do now.
Mm-hmm.
And you coach CEOs from around the world.
Mm-hmm.
What did life look like before that?
Before, it was more chaotic. It was running and growing a venture-backed software company that, if anything is venture-backed or PE-backed, often your timelines are a bit stressful and your goals are a bit lofty, and a lot of impossibility looms. And part of me loved that. I loved the impossibility, or the seemingly impossible, and making what was told by many impossible possible. And I was happily married, still am, thankfully, but not able to give to my wife her number one love language of quality time as much as I wanted. I tried to carve out as much as I could. We would do date nights regularly, but I wasn't there as much as I wanted to be emotionally during the week, and that bothered me. I didn't like that. I knew in time I wanted to shift that. But I've always been, for the last 22 years, a father of 4, now 5, because my son got married, which is great. Married almost 25 years, and so that's who I am. But what I did before was run software companies and build and grow and lift people through that medium before I started coaching.
So when you're saying that you're not able to give that quality time, despite all the efforts and the intentional behaviors of date night, this, that, was it a mix of travel? Was it a mix of just long hours because it takes what it takes? And where were you at the time?
Yeah, it was a little both. Thankfully, I didn't get too seduced with it takes what it takes. I'm going to be in the office for 18 hours. That was never part of the equation. But travel, I did a lot of the expansion of the business globally. And so I would travel a lot. And as much as I could, I would take my wife, Sherry, with me. But often we couldn't. So there was travel. There were some late nights, but not. Thankfully, this was in Arizona, not in Silicon Valley. Where Silicon Valley, it's kind of more like you're in the office till 8 or 10 or midnight.
Yeah.
And we never subscribed to that, which is good. There were a few nights when we did, end of months that would happen, but overall it wasn't an everyday thing. Travel though was the biggie. And then also serving in the community and serving in a church. I was gone a lot on weekends, campouts with Boy Scouts a lot. And with young kids, it was just like, she just needed like, can I just have a break, please?
Yeah.
And so I didn't give her as many breaks as I wanted. And I think I'm being hard on myself in some regard, but in other regards, she'd be here and go, no, that's fair, right?
Yeah.
Because it would kind of ebb and flow. It wasn't super dramatic, but there were times where it wasn't as good, and a few times when it was really bad. And that's what there were some wake up calls that I had.
Give me an example of what a wake up call looks like.
Ooh, you ready for a good one?
Please.
It was a good story. So I had just started. We had moved from Southern California to Arizona. We had 2 kids, one on the way. That's an important factor. And my previous job was with a Fortune 10 company, lots of stability, lots of just chill. I could go to doctor's appointments. Then I go to a bootstrap startup, completely the opposite, just totally in the office a lot. On top of that, the CEO of the company was my brother. So I needed, in my own self-conscious mind, I needed to just let everyone in the office know, all 15, 20 of us, that I was hired because I could deliver results, not because of my last name. And so that was an insecurity that I had. And I let it take it a little too far, where I was first in the office, last out, and I was going to work my butt off and deliver results. All up until our son was born, that was kind of my thinking. So that when he was born, I could have a little reprieve to do that. Well, I come home one night and nobody's there. So my wife and 2 kids gone. And I'm like, and the car's gone. And I thought, So I text her, nothing, call her, nothing, text, call for 3 hours trying to get hold of her. And I was like,
this is before Find My Friends.
Yeah, exactly. So finally I get a hold of her and I was like, hey, are you okay? Yeah. Is everything good? Uh-huh. Which, if you've been married long enough, you know that means absolutely not. And I said, hey, are you going to come back? No. And I was like, wow, okay. Do you want to tell me where you're going? Nope. Okay, love you. So then about an hour later, we talk again, and she lets me know she's taking the kids to Disneyland. She's like, I'm sick of this Arizona heat, being pregnant. I'm done. Going back to Southern California to a happy place. I was like, good for you. That's great. And I said, can I join you? No.
Oh,
I was like,
and I know Sherry, so this is even more amazing to me.
Totally. I was like, oh boy, I screwed up. And I was like, shoot. So she just was done. She's like, I'm tired. You're gone a lot. And I want to get out of the heat and I want to go to a great place. And you may or may not be there. So I'm gone. And so it was a wake up call. It's like, I'm definitely way out of whack, way out of balance. I got to change that. So we did, and we worked through what does that look like. And I had to get really clear in my own mind and my own fears and my own insecurities, which often in life, some of the biggest things that are holding us back every time, only every time, is our fears and insecurities, but they're just masked in different packages and different scenarios. And I had to realize, okay, I need to get over that, need to get over this and do this instead, and keep first things first. Stay prioritized and stay totally madly in love and devoted to my wife and my kids, and not let the pressure and the stress and the current of the company pull me along. Be more intentional. So I had to that was a really big step of getting some things right.
Wow.
Yeah, it was rough. It was not a good day.
So
not a good weekend.
Meanwhile, what was your position at the time?
So I was heading up the business development function, growing the business outside of the 4 walls. So there was an inside sales team and then an outside sales team, technically, through strategic partnerships, through
You'd
affiliates,
be so good
all
at
that
that.
stuff.
You
I
are
loved
so
it.
good at that.
I loved it. It was great. But, it required, I had to start it from scratch. It didn't exist before. And I guess it kind of did technically, but not on its own entity to say, okay, now go bring in 50% of the company's revenue. Oh, and by the way, there's no leads. Go make it happen.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of inertia, I shouldn't say that, a lot of early energy that was required to get that going, to avoid the inertia and avoid some of that stuff, to create a flywheel is what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
And that a lot of startup juice went into that. It was not easy.
So how does your brother, aside from sibling, I'm guessing you had a good relationship with him, how does he cast this net and say, hook, line, sinker? Jeff, you're coming to Arizona from Cali. You just left a Fortune 10 job And now here's the American dream, so to speak, right? But risk,
Man,
I
great
imagine.
question. Great question. We actually worked together in the late 90s and early 2000s at a web services company here in Utah and helped build that together with a couple other friends. We were acquired by a New York-based company, and it was great. It was awesome. And then the bubble burst, the dot-com bubble burst,
Yeah.
and everything went to crap. And so we went from a team of about 120 to 20 in a couple of weeks. He was one of the ones that left. I stayed. And when he left, he went with my best friend and his brother, and they started this software company.
Gotcha.
So the whole time they're like, hey, you should come with us. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm good where I am. And candidly, when we worked together initially, we were both young and prideful. It worked okay together, but we weren't great together. And we would get jealous of each other. We get bugged at each other the way brothers do, right? Especially when you're dumb and young and you think you know better. And I wasn't as humble as I needed to be. And he was bugged that I would do some things good. And we just had the competition that wasn't as healthy. It wasn't toxic, but it wasn't great. So when he said, hey, you should come over, I was like, I love you more than I love business. And I want to make sure our family stays intact and we have good relationships. And I'd heard too many horror stories of family and business. And I said, I'm not going to be one of those statistics. So fast forward, and we would just kind of keep in touch. And they started making some traction. And I was diagnosed with cancer. And when I had melanoma and my world was rocked, and the doctor was like, this is the silent killer of men your age. And I was mid-20s. I was 26, I think.
Oh my goodness.
He's like, this, you don't mess around with this. And I let my family know. And I had a major surgery. It was really crazy on my back. And it was a rude awakening. And I thought, why am I here? Like, really, what am I doing? And am I meant to do what I'm doing currently or not? And the wise brother saw the opening. And he's like, want to do some really purpose-driven work? Come here, homie. And he's like, here's an offer. And I said, no, it's not going to work. Like, I already have this and this and this with this company. And as a startup, I'm not going to expect you to do that. And he said, well, what is it that you have? What's your wish list? And I was like, this, 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 this. And I negotiated. And he came back and he goes, done. And I went to Sherry and I was like, oh crap, this is real. Like, oh, I don't.
And she probably knew that he was coming after you, right?
Yeah. Because it had been kind of friendly for a few years, but then it got aggressive.
Yeah.
And we were like, we don't want to go to Arizona. I love surfing every weekend here. And I'm really digging the California life. It's great. It'd have to be like an act of God for this to happen. Famous last words. And so, we recovered from cancer. He gave the offer and just said, just think about it. And if you want to do the best work of your life, you'll join us. Totally your choice. He's good. He's really good. And he did leave it up to me and put a really good scenario in there. And he said, I know you feel secure at this Fortune 10 company, but I'm here to tell you, you will create your own stability here more than any other company because you'll create the value. When you're one of 500,000 employees, you can't create a lot of stability. As much as it feels stable, that's not totally accurate. And that truth was, I knew that was real. And I was like, dang it. I know, he's good. So all that came together, and that's the long answer. The short answer is I prayed. And when I prayed and asked if this is something we should do, it was very clear. But that didn't matter. Sherry needed to find out. And
of course.
So she did as well. And lo and behold, she got a really clear answer, but didn't tell me for a week. She's like, I don't want to go to this freaking desert. I hate that.
That's what I was going to ask. Do you think it was like crap, how am I going to?
No, yeah. She was like, I'm out. I do not want this. And I said, I'm with you. I don't want to go back home. I love California more than Arizona. I just do. And nothing wrong. Arizona's fine, but it wasn't.
But you were surfing every week.
Yeah, I love surfing. It was great. But when she received clear clarity and then finally said, me too, I was like, oh no. And so we both went a little bit begrudgingly, but knowing it was right,
Yeah.
So, and that gave me a lot of peace, because when it got hard, for example, when she went back to California and said, I'm out, right? We both knew we did the right thing for the right reasons. It'll work out. And it did.
Well, and I'm so glad that she went to Disneyland and not like, we're done.
Right. For real. I didn't know what she was going to do. I mean, it was not a good place. I was like, oh man, I definitely have screwed up here. This is not good. And so thankfully she was still in love,
Just needed a
really
break.
bugged. Yeah. Really, really bugged. And for good reason. I definitely was not as diligent as I needed to be in my most important priorities.
Wow. So, okay, fast forward, you've experienced an acquisition at one company, and that can look very different depending on what your position is, whether it was subsequent or just after at some point. You end up in Cali at this Fortune 10. Now you're going back into grit grind startup mode, and you're doing this. At what point does this end? Because that's not what you're doing now.
No. Yeah. Good question. I didn't know. All I knew was that I was in an environment where I could cultivate my God-given talents and gifts to lift and lead and build and inspire people. And I loved that. And there was a never-ending list of problems to solve. And I loved solving problems with awesome people. And I loved seeing people for who they could become and challenging them and pushing them and not taking fear or doubt or any insecurity at face value and just saying, no, I don't buy it. I don't buy that. And it was a tough balance. You can't be super cold to where you don't validate the emotion and the fear. But if you're too much of a pushover, you're not going to get anything done.
Of course.
So I love that. I loved the impossible. I loved the Nelson Mandela quote that it always seems impossible until it's done. And then in hindsight, let's go, yeah, we always knew that happened. No, beforehand, it feels impossible. And I loved doing that over and over and over in different teams, different environments. And I got moved around in the company more times than I can remember seriously to just take on a new challenge, a new team, a new department. I didn't do any of the coding or any of the finance or legal, but pretty much everything else at one time or another, I was doing something.
Amazing.
And I love that. I learned I was a definite learner. I love to learn and grow. And I have ADD, and so I get bored easily.
Yeah.
So I needed the challenge all the time.
Hi, I'm your friend over here.
Many people listening are as well.
Yep.
At 1.5 to 2 point speed,
Yes.
because it's, you got to hurry.
Which is actually the perfect speed for my podcast with the way that I talk. And it depending on the guest, right? But the way that I talk, 1.5 to 2x, perfect for most people.
Agreed. Helps me. So yeah, that's what pulled me there and helped me go, okay, then it doesn't really matter how long I'm here, as long as I'm lifting and building people. That was what I loved to do. And because I got to do it in different teams at different times, in different seasons and sizes of the business, I loved it. It was just super rewarding. And I thought, if there's an exit, if there's a liquidity event, do I stay? Do I not? I don't know. We'll see when that road comes. And then we raised capital, and there were some liquidity events and things that happened. And we stayed though, because it was just fun.
Yeah.
Just a great environment. And we saw, man, we're just beginning. Let's keep going. And I just loved it. And then we started growing globally, and I got to be a part of that. I loved global expansion. It's one of my favorite things. I love global mindset and business. So then I went to business school in a global function at Thunderbird and loved that while I was still working there. And I was like, this is great. I love this. And I did that MBA to help build the business, only to finish the MBA and leave the business.
Interesting.
Yeah. It was very interesting. And my negotiation was the business would pay for the MBA when I finished, while I continued to keep key metrics in place and everything. So there was a good back and forth. But then when I left, I was stuck with a bill.
Yeah.
It's like, this is a big 6-figure bill. Like, I don't like this. What do I do? And I thought, it's all right. It's the right thing. And the timing was just right. There was a seasonality in the business. There were leadership changes. And there were things I could just tell the more I did in the business, the more new leaders just kind of discredited, because my last name, it's part of it.
Yeah.
Also, I'm kind of a lot of energy, and people are like, I don't like this guy. He just sees the glass half full so much that he doesn't really face reality. And there were just some perceptions that were there, earned and unearned, true and untrue, that it didn't really matter as long as it was there. And I just sensed, this is not working out. This is not it. And it's time. And it was after 11 years and good run, really, really fun, but difficult, And then my brother and I were like, now what? But here's a great story.
Was he out at that point
No,
as well?
he was still there.
Okay.
He was still there. He was still there as a CEO, but the board had asked him to be the face of the company, but not the operator of the company. And they brought in different operators, good people, great, awesome people, just different, didn't see things the same way. And I loved what I learned from them. But there was a moment where I could tell you and I are not seeing the same. And I pretty much called them out and just said, seems like anything I do doesn't really connect with you. And are you open to hearing how I'm seeing the side of the story? And he kind of listened, and a month later I was gone.
Yeah.
So it's all good. But we did say at the end, when we started, we said, look, our relationship is way more important than the business. And we're not going to be a statistic of family and business horror stories. So what needs to be true? And we said, well, there are one of three things that typically are in the mix when crap hits the fan with family and business. Either pride and ego, right?
Surprise.
Yeah. Laziness and entitlement, and lack of gratitude. And so we just said, let's just make sure we stay humble, we work our butts off, and we stay as grateful as possible at every step of the road. And let's just maintain and build a better relationship. 11 years later, we have an exit interview. And we said, remember those times when we were worried this might ruin our relationship because before it wasn't as great? And we both just wept. And I just said, I am so grateful that 11 years later, not only did none of the horror stories happen, but the inverse happened. We're stronger together. We have way more love and respect for each other. We've seen each other in the trenches in the hardest impossible moments, just overcome that. And we just couldn't help but go, that was such a great ride and such a blessing. And we just hugged and wept. And his office had it's glass doors, and so you could see right through, and we're just crying together. It's like, I don't care.
Love that.
It was awesome. And we saw each other at our best and couldn't help but just step back and admire and honor the men that each of us had become amidst lots of turmoil, and staying married and trying to be better husbands and fathers and serving in our community, stuff that's hard. Growing a business is no joke. And a lot of families are ripped apart because of the business. And we were bent on not having that happen, which is why I do what I do now.
And how about the best friends?
Great. Still totally tight. Still, in fact, a year into it, he pulled me aside and he goes, dude, I am so grateful you're still here. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you were one of three in the last couple of years that were hired at more of a senior level, and nobody else lasted. And I didn't want to tell you that because I was worried, but I was worried that you may not make it through. And I'm so glad you did.
Oh, you're like,
and I was like, good. So
yeah,
I'm glad I did too. And part of that was because I was insecure. I had to keep driving results. But the other part was just I cared about results and about the company for the good of the whole, not just for my own self-preserving selfish needs, but they both were there. So yeah, we still are great friends. We're not as close mostly, and I wish he were listening to this because he doesn't answer my freaking texts.
He's getting a link.
But because we've been friends since 7th grade, we're homies forever.
And you pick up where you left off when you do chat.
Totally. Yeah. He's a brother for life. And so we're super tight. And it was fun for me to see who he became as a business owner and as a genius coder and as a creator. I would have never seen that had we not worked together. So it was really beautiful. Cool. The depth of our relationship was really powerful.
I love that. So this ends, and are you okay financially? Are you worried? Are you chasing your next job? Yeah. Do you have some time to chill?
Great question. Financially, we were okay. We had it's a Series C and Series D from Goldman and Bain respectively. I was able to pull some off and have a decent liquidity event, which was nice. And we did some stuff and saved some stuff and invested some stuff with that. So that was good. And then went back to school where the company was going to pay for it. And then I had this 140 grand debt of business school. And I was like, oh, I don't like that.
Yeah, of course.
So that was frustrating. It wasn't, oh no, we're screwed, but it wasn't, I was a little bugged by that, but I thought, well, I chose it.
Yeah.
I can't be bugged at anyone but me. And so I thought, all right, we got to pay that off. How do I do that as quickly as possible? And where's my next gig? Do I start on my own? Do I help build another software company. What do I do? So I just started exploring and started putting feelers out there and found a few options and found a place up here in Utah, which is what prompted us to go from Arizona to Utah. And then little did we know what was coming.
Please do tell, Jeff.
Oh, yeah. So I said, all right, I want to be with a purpose-driven company north of 2 million who is in SaaS, who need a revenue leader. That was kind of my narrowing focus. By the way, if anyone's out looking for a job, don't cast your net wide, cast it narrow. The more narrow, the more you're able to find what you're looking for, and people will help you determine that versus, oh, I'll keep that in mind that you're looking for a job.
I
And it goes
love
lost
that
in the
advice.
ether. It's so counterintuitive, but the more surgical and narrow you get, the more readily you're going to find what you want. And you have to do the work to say, what do I actually want?
Of course.
That's part of it. Anyway, so I did all that, found a great company up here. And between Christmas and New Year's, we thought we need to look for places where we might move, and looked for the entire week, super nauseating, super tough. And I was like, man, real estate up here is more expensive than I thought it was. It's not fun. And last day we were going up, we looked from Linden to Alpine and looked all around. And on the last day, drove down the street, and we were done. The kids and I were done. And Sherry was like, just one more street. Let's keep trying. And so we go around the street, and you've been to my home. And we come around, and as we see this white house on the corner, we both were like, dang.
Angelic beam.
Yeah. And it wasn't because it was pretty. That helped. But there was something else. There was just like this pull, like an angelic bing, like, go look there. But there was no for sale sign. So we drove around, and we're like, man, that house, and then I went back and pulled in front of the house, and she goes, what are you doing? And I said, oh, you know what I'm doing. And I went and knocked on the door. But all the sales experience and negotiating experience tells me, don't do that. I get it. But I was like, there's something else going on here. Why not? What's the worst that could happen? Famous last words. So long story longer, they said, we're not really quite ready to sell, but I'm the builder. My wife is the designer. And we've done this before where we build and then sell and then build a new one. And so we'll think about it. And I was like, yeah, at what cost or at what price are you going to think about it? Right? Of course you'll think about it. So we're driving home from Utah to Arizona, and Greatest Showman had just come out 2 weeks previous. So I was listening to the soundtrack.
Great soundtrack.
Great soundtrack. And I'm sitting there going, what am I doing? I don't even know the price of this home. I don't want to get into more debt. I already have the student loans I want to pay off. And, I want to come up to Utah and not be in debt. But I just kept feeling like, and then I realized, oh, you're scared. That's all it is. You're just scared. You're scared of the money, and you're scared of others' perceptions of being in this nice fancy house. Because I kind of prided myself in being a regular dude.
Yeah.
Driving a Honda Civic when I wanted, and for as long as I wanted, being in a regular home, I was fine with that. But being in a nicer home messed with my head. I didn't like that until I realized, oh, another form of fear, another form of pride.
This is so good, dude.
So I was like, oh, dang. And then I listened to this lyric as I'm driving. And as I'm all these battles, it's a 12-hour drive. I got a lot of thinking time, right? And the lyrics, we can live in a world that we design. I was like, boom, that's it. So I'm going to go create this. I'm going to go design this, and I'm going to partner with God and figure out what needs to be true in order for that to happen. I'm going to let go of fear. I'm going to let go of insecurity. I'm going to let go of perceptions of other people. That's hard to do. We like to say that we don't care, but I think most of us do care what others think for one way or another, right?
Guilty.
Yeah, we all have that. And I just thought, all right, game on. What needs to be true? And then after we had knocked on the door, the whole week I was there, I was trying to get in touch with someone I was with in Argentina as one of my mission companions who I loved, who was from Alpine. Didn't get a hold of me all week because I didn't respond. The day we get home, he texts me back and says, hey, dude, sorry, I was gone. That's cool. You might be moving up to Alpine. Here's the schools. And I was asking him kind of that type of stuff. He says, hey, let me drop a pin of where I live. And I was like, okay. So he drops a pin. And I told him I had knocked on a door. And he's like, oh, man, I love it. That's so bold and kind of crazy. And I was like, I know, but if it's right, it's right. He drops a pin. And I was like, how does he know where I knocked? And then I stretched the image, the very next door, like literally the next door neighbor. And I was like, dude, I knocked on 1204 and you're 12. And he's like, And so when a text conversation goes back and forth, then you just have to call, right? And so we pick up and we're like, what? This is crazy. So I was like, okay, I've been praying for guidance and clarity. Didn't expect that one. And I thought, there are coincidences out there, but I don't really believe in any of them. I think there aren't coincidences. And that was like next level. Then the next day, the sellers of the home gave me the price of the home. Notice the sequence. If it would have been in the reverse order, I would have been like, deuces, I'm out. I don't want to do this. But it wasn't. And God knew it. And he knows me. He knew exactly how I'd respond with fear. Like, I don't want to do that. Right? And so he says, that's where I live. I say, wow, we've been praying about this. And he said, we've been praying about this. And like connecting prayers, there's something magical about when you find out the other side of the prayer and what someone else is seeking and how God just puts puzzle pieces together. It's the most humbling thing to be a part of. And I thought, okay, if this is your will, it's going to happen. Yeah. Next day, they gave me the price. Oh, no. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. And then I thought, if it's his will, there'll be a way. I just got to exercise agency and actually do the work. The home fell through 11 times. 11. I cried more in that 6-month period than I did in the previous 6 years. I was like, what do you want me to do? And anytime it fell through, I was relieved because I was like, okay, door closed. I don't really want this anyway, but every time a new window would open. And I was like, oh, dang it. And therein, so this was January, very beginning of the year. On February 18th of 2018 at 2:30 in the morning is when I woke up out of just totally clear as day. And the thought was, it's time to start your coaching business. And I was like, and I don't wake up in the middle of the night, nor do I wake up with clarity if I do wake up. Right? I go to the bathroom, go back. I'm like a zombie, like most of us. Yeah. But I was on fire and I couldn't go back to bed. And I thought, wow. And so then a whole new path began. So yeah, the story gets longer. I'm trying to be short with it, but that was way too long already.
No, that wasn't too long, because here's something that you're doing incredibly well, in my opinion. As you're talking about things, you're bringing up the good, bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
I'm a glass half full guy, and I have a friend named Jeff Griffin who's like, no, Bobby, the glass is always full. The other half just might be air. And I'm like, oh, funny enough, you've used the word impossible a lot today.
Right.
He wrote a book called I'm Possible, and he just put an apostrophe in the word, right? And anyway, shout out to Griff if he's watching. But those are things where I'm like, man, dude, I love what you're doing here, because you do have this magnetism about you, this charisma, this beauty in your soul. And for somebody like me, I'm attracted to that. And I'm like, dude, there's a reason I love being around you.
Thank you.
And it's not just that, but that definitely, game recognizes game. And I'm a pretty positive guy, and I want to surround myself with others like that. Right.
Yeah.
But in addition to this, you've mentioned things like my own fears, my own pride. I've screwed up in this way. Totally. My wife was ticked in this way. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, this is called authenticity.
Yeah. Put
that up on the screen. Authenticity, right? That's what it is. And that's who you are.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. It's a lot of work for all of us, right? We've got to do it. And when I've learned that when you fully commit to something, like truly, truly commit, the universe will conspire to make it work. But it'll test. And I say the universe, that's the quote, God, whatever it is you want to say, right? For me, it's God.
Yeah.
But our convictions are tested. And when it gets hard, it's a great moment to say, do you really want this? Or were you just kind of hoping it'd be easy, right? And so one time, like the 5th time that it fell through, I was up here. I was commuting back and forth from Arizona to here. My kids hadn't moved with me yet. And I was trying to register my kids for school. And I go to the elementary school. And at this point, the home had already fallen through. I think we were on the 5th or 6th. I can't remember. But we were solid on this one. Everything felt great. I went in, talked to the principal, talked to the front office, started filling out the paperwork. And they said, great, in order to be here in this Alpine Elementary, you've got to have a home address within the school boundaries. Fair enough, right?
Yeah.
And they said, what's your home address? And I said, oh. And right then I got a text from our lender saying, I thought this one was ironclad. I'm so sorry. It fell through. We don't have a deal. And I'm like, and I'm sitting there filling out the paperwork. And so I had my first name, last name, had all this, home address. I look at my text and I look at the paper and I wrote the address of the home.
I love that.
1204. Here it is. Alpine, Utah. Done. And then just submitted it and said, here you go. And they're like, okay, thank you very much. And then went back in my car and prayed. I was like, well, now what? But again, it was just, I kind of smiled because I was like, oh, here's another test. That's all it is. It'll work out. And I'm writing the address. And we're going to be at the school and it's going to work out fine. But tell you what, there's a fine line between insanity and conviction, right? And when you're dancing that line, ooh, and most people see the insanity. And often you feel the conviction, but sometimes you're wondering, am I sane? Like what's happening?
Been there.
But then you got to check your motives. Why am I doing this? What is really driving me? And that's what gave me peace. And I thought, he knows it's not what I want. I'd rather not have this fancy little house or fancy big house and have all the judgments that might come with it, all the things. I'd rather just be in a normal home. But there's something he's trying to teach me through this. And the number one lesson I learned was what reverse pride actually is, and caring more about what people think on the other side of being, oh, I just drive a Civic, no big deal.
Yeah.
That's pride. But I'm not driving a Lambo. I'm not wearing my $500,000 watch because I'm a regular dude. Well, that's just a different kind of pride.
Yep.
It's all pride.
Dude, this is so interesting.
I was like, wow, got that. Thank you.
Because we always hear the story of Jeff Bezos. Oh, he drove his Honda for 20 years and Amazon had already taken off and yada, yada, yada. And everybody's like, that's so awesome. That's so awesome. And in some ways that is awesome.
And it depends, right? Depends on where his heart is.
But what I'm hearing is it's more complex than that.
Yeah, often it is. And as is the case with most human beings, right? What we see is not typically what is really going on behind the scenes. But I loved it. It was a fascinating, fabulous journey. And that night when I woke up, the two clear thoughts were, it's time to start your coaching business. And there are too many businesses that are succeeding at the expense of families. And I'm not okay with that. It was like, and then go help with that.
Yeah. And
I was like, game on. Wow. Like, okay. And in less than 4 minutes, had the business plan down, had what I was going to coach on mindset, action, spirituality, and kindness, mask principles. Cute that it's my last name, but it wasn't because it was my last name. It was just like a literal download. And I was sweating and I was like, my heart was racing and I was like, oh my gosh, it's go time. This is it. And the miracle ensued. It was amazing. He made it very clear, this is his will, not mine. Now go and don't let fear get in your way. And what happened about 20 seconds later? Fear crept in.
That was my next question is how many times since then has fear gotten in your way?
Yeah. Right away, I was like, who am I to coach CEOs? I've never been a CEO. And will people pay me? And all the stuff, right? All the stuff. And I had just started with another software company and they knew the story of this miracle house. And I thought, I don't want the CEO to feel like I'm bouncing. I'm not. I just need to have this supplemental income to help pay for this home. And so I was like, I don't know what to do there. And so when it became a more normal hour, I texted him. We had a quick call and he was so awesome, super open, he's like, I love it. This is what entrepreneurship is. And yeah, as long as you do that in the morning and keep things going on a day, I'm totally cool with that. I was like, that's so kind of you. Yeah, it was great. And so within 27 days, found enough clients to pay for the monthly mortgage that we needed for the home. Done.
Incredible.
Like, yeah. No way would that have happened had it been my idea or my will. And secondly, had I let fear get in the way. But it definitely got in the way. And then next time it got in the way was, okay, what do I do with it? You probably need to let people know. No, okay, I'll post it on LinkedIn next week. No, today, right now. And I was like, so I posted on LinkedIn and Facebook. Go look back 6 years ago if you want to stalk my pages. And it says, I woke up like a bolt of lightning tonight and here's what happened. And I just share the story and all my insecurities of like, who am I to do this? And then who am I not to? And just said, I'm open for business. Let's do this. And found enough clients and it worked. I mean, it was literal miracle. So with the start of the business and the creation of the home, God made it very clear to me he was behind it.
Amazing.
And I will never doubt it. I can't. It was just too miraculous.
And now it's
amazing.
Documented in an entirely new way. As if you hadn't documented it before.
Great,
I know you have.
Thank you for this. It's great because, I think a lot of us see ourselves in stories like this and think, where am I letting fear getting in my way? Where am I allowing insecurities and doubts to creep in? And we all have them. But if that's what we entertain, that's what will rule us. But if we just say, you know what, faith over fear, confidence over doubt, and get your motives really pure and what you're trying to do to bring good and light and love to the world, it'll work.
This is so fascinating for me because I've experienced, I imagine like many, I've experienced certain things that you've discussed, right? Mm-hmm. Especially that fear side. I knew that Macey Media needed to happen. Like it was clear.
Yeah.
And I had the business plan. I had created it spiritually, so to speak.
Yeah, totally.
And then I needed to create it physically. Right. And I had experienced a layoff. And ultimately, it turned into me saying, no, I'm not going to look for work. And I am going all in on Macey Media. And I remember the day I was walking around the park behind my house and I called my mom and I was like, this is what's happening. And she looked at me and she was like, I just got the chills, Bobby. Like, I want you to know I believe that you're doing the right thing.
Wow.
And multiple people in my family, many good friends who I respect. What are you doing, dude? Like my own dad, who has very little business acumen, who ended up he was kind of on his deathbed when he said this to me, but he was like, you have a family and a mortgage, right? And I was like, Dad, you don't get to say that to me right now. Like,
not helpful.
It's not helpful. I mean, he did say it and I heard it, right? But it was not helpful.
Right.
And it was one of those things where I just knew inside there was a conviction and it was like, I got to do this.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned kind of this car thing. Here's one more story for you about just this battle with pride, reverse pride, whatever we want to call that journey. I remember I bought a Ford Bronco and I was going to put it on Turo. We did immediately. Yeah. Well, when we bought that car, Macey Media was not in some great financial position or whatever. I mean, we were like 2 years in, and I knew for tax reasons I could make it all work, but I also was looking to diversify income streams.
Yeah.
And I wanted to try Turo. And so I was like, okay, well, not a lot of people have Broncos. They're on back order. I was able to get one, whatever. We overpaid for the car because it was at the height during COVID.
For sure.
And I throw this sucker on Turo, but I remember any time that we had it and it wasn't out for a rental, we would drive the thing because awesome.
Just great car, right?
I live in a normal house. I drive normal cars. And then all of a sudden we have this Bronco. And I remember we go to get in it to go to church. And my wife was like, we're not taking that thing to church. I don't want everybody seeing us pull up in that. And I was like, who cares what people think? Like in my mind, I'm like, our neighbors already know we have it, right? There are certain people in our ward that in our community that are like, hey, cool, right? Like nobody really cared.
Yeah.
Some of the youth that I was working with at the time were like, dude, that's awesome. Can I have a ride?
Right.
But most people didn't care. But Heidi at the time was like, no, like, I do not want people to just know that we have this expensive car. They're going to think all sorts of things. And I'm like, let them think it, because that doesn't change our lives. Like, we have the car. You know, we can't just go resell it right now again. I mean, we could, but we take a loss, right? And we went through our own version of that.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say what's right and what's wrong. It was just a version of that was impactful to me.
Yeah.
And so I just appreciate your stories. I appreciate your references. And here's the fun part for me. I have seen a glimpse of what you teach, and I have met some of your clients because a few months ago, I was in Mexico with Jeff. Jeff gifted me this hat along with an incredible experience. And Jeff and his wife, Sherry, they did a marriage retreat that was like, I'm guessing, a couple's version of what you give CEOs in your coaching business.
Yeah. Yeah. It was amazing. It was another act of creation. Is what it was.
And it was beautiful.
Thank you.
Heidi and I loved that. and we've got a video testimonial proving that we love that. But you invited people who, I don't know, everybody had their own unique personalities. Everybody had their own different life experience. Mm-hmm. Heidi and I think from an age standpoint, we're the youngest there. And we got to be a part of this. And I'm sitting here watching you and Sherry do this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is impactful. And I'm grateful. I've told you that over the phone, but now I got to look you in the eyes. This is something that works. Yeah. You have built a system not only for couples, but also for business leaders, mm-hmm. where if they do what you say, and what you present to them, they're going to learn a lot about themselves.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of success on the other side of that coin waiting for them.
Agreed. Yeah. Thank you. And it was a labor of love. And we, because we saw there are lots of business retreats. There are lots of couples retreats, but there aren't many, if any, that really combine how to grow a really healthy, good business and keep a really healthy, awesome marriage intact. And we are such champions of marriage and family that we've just felt the need, because again, we've seen too many businesses succeed at the expense of families, and we're not good with that. That's just not, we want to change that. And so 5 years ago, we knew that idea would happen, but it took a long time to, COVID happened in between too.
Of course.
But lots of insecurity. And for Sherry, who's such a beautiful introvert, for her to be in front of people, she's like, no. You can do that. I don't want to do that. And if we're going to do a retreat, that means I have to be in front of people? No. So if we do it, give me some time, because I need to process that. And I said, you got it. And 6 years went by, and we said, each year I'd say, is this the year? And no, and cool. I did not want to pressure her at all. And then at the end of 2023, we tested it with a few clients in London and with their spouses for just a 4-hour stint. And it was amazing. They loved it. Sherry's like, oh, it was much better in reality than it was in my head. And I thought, isn't that a true maxim of life, right?
Fear.
Seriously, it's way worse than I'm in reality. And so when we did our offsite at the beginning of 2024, she said, yeah, this is the year. And so we set it in motion, and we wanted to be at the nicest resort we'd ever seen in our lives. And we did that at the Waldorf in Cabo. And nicest we've ever seen, maybe not, because there are a few in London that are up there, but it's a world-class. I mean, is that place not crazy?
That place is amazing. And we'll put some B-roll on here real quick.
Oh my gosh. It is. And their service, it is so luxurious. We wanted that. We wanted a really high-end, luxurious environment that's conducive to romance and connection and creation and possibility. And we were looking around saying, well, where would we go? Where could we? And then we looked around, we're like, let's do it here, because we were there for our offsite, or just she and I for our annual offsite that we do. And so we went back in November and created this 3-day event that was freaking amazing. Which is awesome.
It was freaking amazing. That's exactly what it was.
And did you notice from all the feedback, the word that people kept using was magic?
Yes.
Everyone said, this is magic. This is magical. And I thought we didn't really even say that going through it, but everybody on their own came to, I didn't know I needed this. We are way stronger as a couple. Now we have a structure of how we're going to bring the business into the marriage and the marriage in the business, and in ways that we didn't know how to do before. Now there's more harmony versus friction and all this stuff. And we're like, yes. And man, that was a labor of love. That was a lot of work.
Heidi and I have continued talking about this.
Awesome.
We since have gone to dinner with the Sparks.
I love it.
And that was a massive topic of conversation.
Great.
And then, if you haven't seen the episode with Randy Sparks, go watch it, because that's what I'm talking about. But then I did breath work with Randy just a couple weeks ago. And it was like, once again, dude, Mexico with Jeff and Sherry. Oh my goodness. Right. Like, here we are months removed and we're all still feeling it.
Yeah, it was magical.
Yeah.
I'll say it again because
Word
that's what
cloud,
everyone keeps
magical.
saying. Yeah, it was epic.
Yeah.
So great.
Well, I've taken up a lot of your time. I have so many questions I want to ask you, but out of respect, I'm going to ask you this one.
Okay.
Jeff, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm always ready. Come on, bring it.
What does it mean to you to be somebody?
Ooh, this phrase comes to mind, that you can't powerfully create your future until you are powerfully at peace with your past. And the patterns that I see a lot in CEOs that I coach and help is they run into the same roadblocks of the same principle that they haven't been able to just be at peace with of something that's occurred in their past. And they keep getting in their own way. And so being somebody is loving what is and being who you are. You don't have to put on any facade. You don't have to put on any show. Just be comfortable in your own skin. That is easier said than done. We all have insecurities and fears and things we don't like about our physical appearance, about how we sound, look, whatever it may be. But if you can just look in the mirror and just love what is, be who you are. That's what it means to me. It's an authentic ability to just embrace every aspect about yourself and love what is. That's what it means to me to be someone.
I'm just going to say thank you, my man. Thank you.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Great to be with you. If you have not subscribed, please do so. jeffmask.com. He's also on the socials. You can search for him and message him there to tell him what a good person he is. Over and out, my friends.